To me, it's tied to the mob, to the internet mob, because they even bring up, did we contribute to this? Had we not gone on this hunt and gave him this attention and created this need for us to want to get him, would that have maybe not caused him to move on? Was it our presence and our attention that
caused the escalation?
Yeah, that caused the escalation because now he had an audience.
Well, that's a stupid question to ask. It is. It's like, are you as an audience member contributing to this sociopath's desire to kill people? You guys get to own some of the guilt. So how's that taste? How's that taste?
The golden rule is don't do unto others as you would not have done it to yourself. And I'll give you an example. I once, on a pretty active forum back early in my days of leaving the church, made a comment that I regretted that wasn't like super sexist, but it was a little bit sexist.
It wasn't like the most sexist thing
I've
ever said.
I've vetted this with some people whose opinions I trust and respect. Like Louis C.K. said before he got sent into the wilderness.
I like how Matt is saying, I solved the problem of evil if you just remove the God element.
Yeah, I resolved it.
Now you're not talking about the problem of evil. You're restructuring the entire argument.
First, I want to change the question.
To really make it an easy argument to solve.
Welcome back to Infants on Thrones. I'm Glenn Ostland, and this is episode 622, Don't F with Cats, and the problem of evil, or something about evil, whether it's a problem. I don't know, you'll hear about it. But guess who's back? Guess who's back?
I'm going to make a fucking point, because I'm tired of going,
Go for it, man. Can't touch this.
Randy Snyder. Oh, I loved this conversation. So you're going to hear today Matt Long, Tom Perry, Randy Snyder, and it's just awesome. I hope you love it.
This is Infants on Thrones, the philosophies of men mingled with humor. We are the core.
I'm knee deep into the 48 Laws of Power, Tom.
Oh yeah, how's that?
I'm loving it.
Really?
Yeah, it
was a tough read for me. I mean, like I said, once I started listening to it with the perspective like, oh, this is how like sociopaths and psychopaths work, then it started like making it was like a level of entertainment, but also very informational. I'm like, oh shit, that's how I've been victimized by some sociopaths or whatever. Like, oh yeah, it's good to know. It's good to know their playbook, man.
Well, he does an amazing job with those kind of metaphorical, allegorical, and historical examples. And I think what I'd like to do is go through that and try to really pinpoint very more accessible, kind of modern examples that would make more, I think the examples that he uses are like so far removed from our reality or our world that they may as well be boogeymen. You reference the Prince and Napoleon or whatever, the different things. It was just kind of like, at this point, these are just fictional characters to people who are listening to this book. So I don't know that it has as much integration as it maybe could, but I thought it was, it's like a needy, I mean, like 4 or 5 is all, and yeah, I'm really enjoying it. Kind of fascinated by it. There's some article about how Jeffrey Epstein apparently had in his Amazon thing had some handbook of destruction or something. I don't know.
Sounds like him.
Yeah, is a nice segue to really what we're going to talk about here: the problem of evil, and don't fuck with cats. An internet, what is it? What's the colon? An internet guide to not fucking with cats or something? No, what is it? The internet investigation. Tom, you haven't seen it yet still?
No, I still haven't seen it.
So I don't want to break it down really, but because I don't want to spoil anything.
I don't mind. I think if you want spoil away, I don't
Yeah,
mind.
but I don't think it's necessary, and it's not but
There will be. We can't talk about it without the big
no,
spoiler.
but wait, did
Um,
you say the big spoiler?
yeah, the big spoiler is that the guy moves on from cats to
Oh, yeah,
a
that
human.
we can talk
Yeah,
about.
spoil away, dude. Yeah, I don't care. It's
But
fine.
the but I thought the reveal at the end, bro, was fascinating. Kind of
What?
some of the other motivations and some of the other things that I don't want to spoil because I thought that was a nice little reveal at the end. The tie into, you know what I'm talking about, Randy?
I actually don't know what you're talking about. Did I turn it off before the?
Yeah, you're like, I'm an episode and a half in, I'm out. I'm fucking out, right?
Credits are on their way. Click.
I get it. Bad guy. I'm out. Right. Randy, give us an overview of Don't Fuck with Cat. Like
Broad points are this video surfaced on YouTube where this guy, in a very cruel way, he took a plastic bag, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 kittens, but it was kittens. He stuck them in the bag, and then he used a vacuum to suck out all the air until they died. And that, the Don't Fuck with Cats is like supposed to be one of the rules of the internet because, people, like, you put a kitten playing with a ball of yarn and it goes viral.
Right.
People love cats. I would argue that there are a segment of the population that have more of an emotional response to a kitten dying than they would to like a baby dying, a human.
Well, and in fact, in this documentary, the only tears that were shed were for animals.
Yeah. That is something I wanted to say is that they talked about this poor Asian gay kid who was targeted, got his head, got brutally murdered, stabbed to death on camera, and his head cut off and dismembered and all that. And they mention that with a dry eye. Mm-hmm. And then they talk about the
dog.
The dog that died, his dog that got murdered. The investigator, Matt, is the one.
You're talking about the sergeant. You're talking about the cop.
Yeah, I'm talking about the detective, the one who was investigating it. She mentioned everything with like clinical language when it came to the human, and then when she said the dog, they had to stop because she was so choked up.
Yeah.
So don't fuck with cats. So this guy fucked with cats, and so this online army formed to try to uncover who this guy was. And the theme of this is that he enjoys the chase. He enjoys to taunt and to be chased and to mock while he's being chased.
Yeah.
And these people's lives are just basically consumed. I mean, so many of these people's lives are just consumed by finding out who this guy is. And they go through all these different ways to try to figure it out. They can't figure it out. And then the guy taunts him again by posting another video where he's playing with the kittens' corpses in rigor mortis. So they're stiff and he's just playing with them. And then they try to contact the cops to let, they think they figured out where this guy is. They've narrowed it down to a street corner in, like, what is it, Toronto?
Yeah, there's a lot of Canada and some Europe.
Yeah, because
Canada.
He's from Toronto when he kills the cats, and he moves to Montreal when he kills the human. At any rate, these people's obsession does produce results, and they do figure out basically who this guy is. But what is a cop going to do when they get a phone call? They say, we've done an internet search.
Hey, we figured out who tortured these cats. Right.
Yeah, they're like, well, we're more worried about humans being killed. But at the same time, the internet mob that was going after this guy knew. I mean, everyone knows that torturing animals is a pretty good sign of violent psychopathy. Mm-hmm. And they were worried that he was going to escalate. And I don't know that it's fair at all to blame law enforcement for not, working harder and stopping this guy. Yeah. And what are they going to do with him anyway? I mean, it's not even. I mean, it's maybe you tell me it's a class 2 felony or whatever it is to kill cats.
Well, it's a felony in certain states, but okay.
And it's in Canada.
Yeah. Right.
And all the mob was all from the United States, as far as I could tell.
Yeah, but it seemed like
the leaders.
Yeah, sure.
So anyway, the kid is clearly disturbed, and he moves from Toronto to Montreal, and brings in this, and the kid is gay, or at least bisexual, and he's a really good looking kid. So easy, like luring someone to his apartment for sex is like shooting fish in the barrel because he's a really good looking guy. And so he lures this Asian guy in, and then he sets up the camera, and he's like, "You guys think fucking killing cats is bad? Watch this, motherfuckers!" And he, on camera, he has the kid tied up, and he has what was it? What was the poster that was above the bed?
Oh yeah, geez.
That ended up being one of his downfalls.
Yeah, there's a number of, well, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But anyway, it doesn't matter. The poster doesn't matter. But he just brutally stabs this kid to death right on camera and posts it on the internet. And
really not even just the internet, but again, it becomes kind of this. He's got an audience now in the group that's trying to find him and catch him, and so he really seems to be targeting his exhibitionist side to this group who is targeting him.
Yeah, did he post it on their website to go after him?
That's kind of how that was my understanding of it, is that they basically, because he kind of infiltrates these groups. He does multiple profiles and things like that, and is messing with this group that ends up because it's their thing goes viral, and it ends up like going out on Reddit, and there just becomes tens of thousands of people that start getting in one way or either one way or another involved in this hunt for this dude. And so yeah, he really that attention, I think, caused him to really focus on his his audience, as it were.
Right. And ultimately, though, he doesn't get caught because of the videos. He gets caught because he doesn't know how to dispose of a body. And a maintenance guy notices blood coming out of a bag in the trash area of an apartment complex and calls the cops. And lo and behold, they find the torso in a suitcase and the other body parts in plastic bags. And then, I mean, the dumbest criminals ever. The guy's like driver's license. It's in one of the bags with the body parts. The murderer.
The murderer's his own.
Yeah.
And then it's just
with his name on it.
And they know who did it at this point. They know it doesn't become it's not a whodunit anymore. It's
a manhunt.
And go get him.
And he goes off to France, and he shows an amazing amount of resourcefulness to evade the cops and to really kind of he really toyed with the French cops, and they never could catch him. And then he went to Germany, and again, his hubris, he went to an internet cafe in Germany, and his picture was all over, because of Interpol, his picture was all over the newspapers in all of Europe, Western Europe. He goes to an internet cafe because he has to check on his status. And the caretaker of the internet cafe calls the German police, and that's where he gets arrested.
Yeah. Which is fascinating. Yeah, right. His exhibitionism and what he's doing there. Yeah, he's Googling himself, the Interpol most wanted, so he can see just what a big deal he is, and that's where he gets caught. So really poetic.
Yeah.
So
arrested at internet cafe.
So there's a couple people that were in here that I want to chat about just a little bit, and that's the kid himself, his mom. As they interview his mom, and she's very in complete disbelief. Not my kid. It was somebody else. And the police, which we already kind of touched on, the internet mob, and then the viewers, because and by viewers I just mean the us, people who either would watch this or would not want to watch it. And it's like it's tied to that law, the 48 Laws of Power issue, that book, Tom, that you were saying, just you don't like watching it. It was like, man, it's like this is a handbook for the for the criminals more than anything else. And what I've heard about from people is, yeah, I would never watch that documentary. And the very documentary itself is a continuation of giving this kid everything that he wants, which is attention and notoriety and fame. And so in watching it and even creating the documentary, that we shouldn't be doing that, because all it's doing is drawing attention to, this and guys like this. So you
you could draw a similar parallel. Well, you can draw a similar parallel to like a mass shooter.
Yeah.
Because what is one of the main goals, or one of the most common goals of a mass shooter, is they feel like a nobody with no power, so they want to become famous. I mean, the guy who killed Johnny Versace, the only reason he killed Johnny Versace was so he could be famous.
Yeah.
And then there's the dilemma of the reporters: do we publish his name? But if one person publishes it, then everyone has to.
Right.
But it's that conundrum of like, this is news. This is a big deal in society, and everyone's going to want to know who it is because everyone wants to know why. That's like the most innate human thing is like, when there's evil that happens, there has to be a motivation or we go crazy. If we don't know why, it drives us up the wall. And that's one of the most brilliant things in Othello is the character Iago does all this evil stuff, and at the very end they're interrogating him and they want to know why, and he will say only one thing: what you know. In other words, I'm not fucking telling you. And sometimes there is no explanation for evil, but yeah, I mean, that's not really what you're getting at, is the voyeurism of the human nature.
Well, it's the contrast. It's almost the conflict. It's like what you just said, and I tend to agree with you. What I was so fascinated about this, because I actually learned I learned some things that I hadn't really thought about before in really watching this documentary. And so when I see it, so it's tied to me. It's tied to the mob, or to the internet mob, because they even bring up, did we contribute to this? Had we not gone on this hunt and gave him this attention and created this need for us to want to get him, would that have maybe not caused him to move on? Was it our presence and our attention that
caused the escalation?
Yeah, that caused the escalation, because now he had an audience. And they seem to kind of struggle with that, really, and almost recognize that maybe that at least was a contributory.
I think the woman more so than the man.
Yeah,
I don't think the man had any remorse for what he did.
No, it was an interesting dynamic there, but
yeah.
And then they kind of break the fourth wall and was like, well, what about you? Are you contributing to it? Kind of that whole, I guess, that thing. And so,
that's a stupid question to ask. It is. It's like, are you as an audience member contributing to this sociopath's desire to kill people? What a stupid question.
I agree.
You guys get to own some of the guilt. So how's that taste? How's that taste?
We're the ones that spent all this money making a documentary, but now we're going to make you feel guilty for watching it.
Your fault.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. No, and I thought that was bullshit. Yeah, that was complete bullshit. But that I do think, again, why is not the great question, but in learning more about his life, learning about his mom, learning just kind of the way he behaved, I think we learned a lot about, or is why do you want to know that? Why do that? That's really the question. Why do I want to know? Well, my goal in wanting to know is to understand those patterns. And this is kind of that throwback, or that connection to the laws of the 48 laws of power. I want to understand this as much as possible to protect myself and those, and other people from those types of patterns and from people like that. So if you can learn some of these motivations and some of the inputs that contributed to such harm and evil, if we want to use that term, I find it really helpful if it's from that perspective.
Yeah, it reminds me of like a couple of examples of the effect that social media can have on people. I had a friend back in the early days of me leaving the church, and then he suddenly one day just completely deleted his Facebook account, and he texted me about it. He said, I found that my happiness was being tied too much to how people were reacting to the things I said on Facebook.
Very so.
So it's not just like, oh, a lot of people, I got in a lot of internet fights. That was my problem.
Yeah.
Was
that a Randy commentary? Is that what you're talking about?
That's my own reason for why I'm not on. I'm technically, my account's still open, but I'm never on it. And mine was, I was just like consumed with these internet arguments I'd get on about global warming and stuff like that. But his problem was,
the world is not flat.
but it's not just the negativity that social media can bring. It's also the anxiety of the lack of positivity. Like you didn't get enough likes, and now you feel like you're less of a person, and it affects your happiness. And the other story is a really close Mormon friend whose son went on a mission, and he came home after 4 months, and it was a big, kind of a devastating thing to the family, as you guys remember that would be if anyone went on a mission and had to come home because of depression.
Yeah.
And so he had to come home because of depression, and I just threw out there as like, I was just, I wasn't trying to give advice or anything, but I'm like, I think kids today have a harder time with social media being present in their young minds all the time.
It's all it's all those dopamine fixes that they get from it and everything. It's like an addiction.
And then add to it, like, when we were kids, if I got bullied, I learned how to avoid the bully and get home safely, and then I'd be safe for the night.
Not knowing that the bully's going to reach out in your pocket and hit your phone.
Be in your freaking room. Be in your room with you.
He'll be in your room with you, and then get people to gang up on you.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Oh, dude, that's a brilliant insight, man. Is all those things with it. The other piece that I found fascinating, and this is, the internet mob, the people, and this is, what are we motivated when we see evil? And it's that I want to get that motherfucker. Now, and not why I really want to make sure this doesn't happen again and protect things. Now, a lot of times people will say that because, it's for the children, and let's do, they always have that magnanimous reason for why, but it's always with this venom of, let's get this, let's go get him. And it's always it's like motivated for punishment rather than motivated for protection. And I think it's a problem. I think it's a problem because it does motivate how we react and respond to harm and evil. If our primary goal is to punish that guy, not let's stop that and then learn everything we can in order to prevent that from happening.
Well, there's a fundamental like dehumanization that happens. So somebody said something that you found really offensive, and now you are so mad about that thing that you want to punish them for that, and they stop becoming like a human who's complex and has 2 kids that depend on him to be happy, so he can go to work and provide, and a wife that loves him, and you just want to destroy them. Yeah. So they become like a symbol of evil rather than a human being that's got flaws.
Well, and I don't know how innate it is in human beings for some form of justice or retribution, but it sure seems pretty common that all of us need to see the scales of justice equal out again, and so that's why a lot of people get like that bloodlust. That if they feel like there's an injustice that needs to be served, that they're not going to be satisfied until.
But I see it as a form of scapegoating. I agree with you. I agree with both of you that's the effect, but it is a form of scapegoating where we want maximum punishment for the guy we finally can get as a symbol, as a symbol for all the guys we don't get.
Well, maybe part of that is that reaching for the extreme is like, well, I don't actually know what's going to satisfy this hunger of the injustice or whatever. And it's like, well, if we make sure that we get this guy the death penalty and that he's dead, that way we cover the bases so that I'm not going to feel that anymore, I guess. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, but the thing is, like, how do you address that inner, I need some sort of retribution?
What's funny is
I think that's kind of, sorry. Yeah, go.
I was going to say, I don't listen just to United States true crime. I listen to true crime that's international, and
Really for the accents? Is that
it's
what you're
really
listening?
no, but no, just to see how the criminal justice system is so different.
Yeah, right.
And so like this guy in like Denmark or Sweden, one of the Scandinavian countries, like brutally rapes and murders and dismembers a woman and gets like 20 years in prison. And as an American, you're just like appalled at how this guy who's like 40 could be walking the streets when he's 60 when he did something so horrific. And you know, it's because I grew up in this retributivist system of the United States and this culture and tradition that we have for that. But then when you like objectively step back and compare recidivism in Scandinavian countries versus recidivism in the United States, you're like, well, maybe they've got something right going, but it sure doesn't feel good. It does not feel good that guy gets 20 years with a possibility of getting off on parole in like 15 years.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, so I'm just, and I used to feel that way, but that
no, it's an emotional thing. I'm not saying it's like a rational feeling.
Yeah, I mean, is that's your? I mean, yeah,
that was my emotional response. I'm like, oh my god, fucking A. In the United States, you face the death penalty in some states.
See, and I'm thinking, man, 15 to 20 years. That's a long time. That person's completely different in 15 to 20 years than they are then.
That's a rational response, but that's not
that
the
might
emotional.
Be enough. And then we can get them out of there.
You with your experience, and your rationality, get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, but it's also it really, it's not just rational. It actually comes from a place of compassion for. And a bit of understanding for the psychopath, the monster.
But who, if they're even just loosely tied to the victims, is going to show any sort of compassion? With
no one.
Perpetrator?
But this is why
fuck that individual.
For sure, if you're tied to the victim, but just like if you're tied to the offender, who wouldn't want mercy and leniency and opportunities for interventions and treatments and that? So there is, families are destroyed in all of this, and good people are destroyed, and good people are on the side and are related to and have positive feelings for the offender. And again, this isn't justification because no, it's not. You can understand and feel for a person who causes real.
But if you take the spotlight away from the victims and you put it towards the perpetrator, like, well, what about their situation? What about their family or whatever? Then it feels like the shadow is now cast on the victims. Like, are you serious? And like, even an iota you're going to give to the perpetrator?
I'm going to give a number of iotas of saying this really happened, and these are experiences that contributed to that certainly contributed to this outcome.
Yeah, this is not an emotional response you're talking about, dude.
Well, it actually is a emotional response.
Well, maybe it is for you, but
extremely emotional response, because here's what I've learned.
Okay.
Every offender is a kid who experienced incredible shit. Almost universally. Almost every. I mean,
there are just some true like sadistic psychopaths.
That exists,
but that's a very, 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 very low number.
Right. And so I come from a place when I see people who do real harm, I really do think, gosh, well, how much you must have suffered as a kid. Now, again, the response isn't that. So therefore, let's let him go and let's give him some money and let's give him another kid and let's go send him to to an island where he can live in the lap of luxury. That seems to be, anytime you even express compassion for someone who does harm, that seems to be the slippery slope that people think. And you can really have real compassion for the person who experienced harm and the person who experienced or who caused the harm, and acknowledge, man, this is a horrible thing that this person went through to bring them here, and I want that harm to stop. And here's some things that ought to be done, not just to stop it, but some form of punishment. And see, I'm not a punishment guy. Let's isolate. And to me, I'm all for imprisoning in a humane way, but our current prison systems, whatever. So I'm all for isolation and for interventions and because what I hold is that what I know is that isolation with comforts is punishment. Yes, put somebody in a room where they have access to television and and books and media, music, and where they're treated, where they have food, and they're not tortured. But as a society, we want torture, and I submit that's the problem of evil. The problem of evil is,
I mean,
that
Tom's reaction is a very human reaction, and the evidence for that is like 99% of human history is so retributivist. I mean, it used to be off the charts. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that if you stole a horse, they hung you from a tree with a very short trial. And so Tom's reaction of like, what about the victim? What about the victim? To me, it's not what about the victim? What about the perpetrator? It's like, what is best for society? And if you go by the model where they actually have true interventions and true humanity in their prison system and less punitive sentences, they're doing something right, because recidivism is repeat offense and just basically the propensity of violence in the entire society. We're not doing it right, and our system is so fucked up. We're making criminals out of guys who are just mainly brown guys who are possessing marijuana because they've been frisked a lot more than I've ever been frisked, and so they go into the prison system for drug possession, and then they become real hardened criminals, and they come out and they graduate to violent crimes.
Well, you talk about for the victim. What help is done to the victim when we put somebody in jail for a long time? Because that system isn't putting any resources to getting that victim any sort of treatment.
Well, the victim looks at it like, well, at least that person's not going to.
Yeah, but the recurring theme I hear is like, you know what? But my daughter's still dead, and I'm still miserable. Right. So I really like the idea, Matt, of diverting resources to the victim and their family in therapy, in some kind of.
And that's what I'm advocating for, saying that is that we could actually reduce some of this very punitive, torturous, the resources that go to that. Well, first of all, our system is so bad at addressing victims anyway. Any form of we're good at murder. We're pretty good at murder. We're pretty good at finding murder and and catching murderers, because but when we talk about sex cases, for example, the systems that we champion and cheer, yay, send them away for a long time. The very system that's built on that is the reason why most victims can't get a voice in the court. That's the very approach is why these cases are not prosecuted, because of resources. And so the thing that they're championing and cheering for is the very thing that is preventing them from getting justice in other situations, and even having cases investigated. And that's the frustrating thing, is we say it's for victims, and it's not. It's for our bloodlust, and it's really for our government's currency, because there are certain people who make an awful lot of money on the harsh sentences, and in not having resources go to the most vulnerable, and investigations of the most vulnerable. And that's the reality of it. The other thing that this kind of tied to that is that I was reflected on is we're really bad at finding serial killers. Like remember there used to be all these serial killers in like the 70s and 80s.
Yeah,
right?
where'd they go? My theory is that they got replaced by mass shooters, but
no, they exist still. They just have learned from the education from the other ones, and law enforcement hasn't caught up with them. So we are so law enforcement is so bad at communicating that we see it in this case, in this Don't Fuck with Cats case. Law enforcement isn't built to work interjurisdictionally.
It is in Western Europe,
and they're not built to work proactively. If you have a report, if you don't have a report, there's nothing we can do. And there's reports all the time where people are like, hey, here's a crime, they're like, yeah, well, Actually, a friend of mine just posted, this was hilarious. A woman that used to work at the county attorney's office as a legal assistant, just posted and said, some truck showed up on my driveway. And I'm like, hey, can you guys come get this truck? And they're like, well, it hasn't been reported stolen. They're like, yeah, but it doesn't belong here. And can you come look? Can you come check? No, we won't even come out. And eventually they go through, it's been a couple days, and they get it towed and finally get it towed. And it turns out, yeah, the ignition was punched and it was a stolen car. It just hadn't been reported yet. And so they had reported to the police that effectively there's a stolen car here sitting in my driveway for 2 days. And then it gets towed, and now they don't really know where the car is. And so they can't even identify it to identify the person, and who knows where the person is. And is there now a reason why that person hadn't reported it stolen? Because they're dead? I mean, it was right there. All it required, somebody was to come out. Oh, yeah, that is a weird thing. Let's look in here. Let's say, it clearly belongs to this person. You make a call, open it up, whatever. Oh, it's been punched. Yeah. Now you may have something. You may not be 4, 5, 6, 7 days from a murder investigation. You might be the first day in. And this isn't the only, it's not uncommon for this type of stuff to happen. So the reason why there's no serial killers anyway, I say no, it's because they do exist. It's just that they're now being investigated in multiple states by agencies that aren't communicating and aren't connecting. And they think they've just got multiple unsolved murders, when what you really have are successful serial killers that aren't posting their videos to the internet saying, come get me.
Or leaving like a really obvious signature of, this is my kill.
Right.
This is my kill.
Yeah, what was the California dude, the Zodiac killer, right?
Yeah, well, he never got caught, so that's a bad example.
Well, at least, yeah, I guess, yeah. Well. So, I mean, and it's, again, it's tied to that, is where do we put our resources and why, and kind of what are the motivators are. And as long as we're doing things that make people feel good, we're really not taking care of victims. And that's my argument ultimately, in what I think this documentary shows pretty clearly is, there's no proactive investigations, and we really, as a society, don't want to treat people who do real harm as people, but we want to treat them as anomalies and as boogeymen and as monsters. And as long as we do that, we're going to continue to operate under the myths and ignore that the boogeymen that exist here, they're in our families. They're our friends. There are people that would do us harm. And if we would spend some time in understanding these patterns, we might be able to see the patterns in our lives and in the lives of our children, in order to have the tools to be able to mitigate the harm that happens in our life. But we're not willing to do that, because that requires, number one, treating people like people and looking at their histories and saying, man, there might be a through line with a lot of murderers. And that through line is they are very severely physically, sexually abused or negligent, completely neglected as children. And these things are happening at really, really high rates. And that contributes to evil. And so let's go here and let's try to minimize the instances of that. Let's try to minimize the instances of that. And if you do that, we'll minimize the instances of this harm. But going and addressing things like, the harm to children, those require resources. And it requires something other than lobbyists to go in and affect laws that don't protect children, whether that be mandatory reporting laws and clergy exceptions. We got lobbyists coming in to do that. And those aren't the only laws. You've got police agencies and lobbyists and people who come in for resources to go to, because there's a lot of resources that come in through drugs and the war on drugs. And so let's put a lot of time and energy into that, because that's a money maker. Whereas investigating a sex abuse case or a rape case, all that does is consume resources. And so if I can minimize the instances of investigations that I do on this end, and I maximize the investigations and the types of and the prosecutions and deal with this type of evil, right? The drug possession, we actually can make money. But if we don't spend our resources over here, not only are we not making money, but we're spending money. And we don't have the budget to do that. And our legislators not going to give us more money in order to do that when they're relying on the money that we're bringing in through the drug investigations in order to pay an entire group's salary. I've got 10 guys that rely on me bringing in money in these marijuana busts. Otherwise, I lose 10 people. That's the reality of the situation. And so, if people can, we are in our outrage and in our call for punishment like this, we're feeding the machine, and we're feeding things like the war on drugs, and to create, there's motivated reasoning associated with this, and motivated behaviors.
Well, but I know you're not saying this, but like you say it costs money, and yes, it costs money and resources to try to bolster institutions to help kids not just avoid abuse, but to escape the poverty and the trappings that come with poverty.
Right.
It takes resources, and people are like, increase taxes. That's just throwing money away. But they're not considering, it's an investment because there is a return on that investment if you invest resources into creating future criminals.
Right.
And also future contributors to society, instead of just, filling our bulging prison system. The most imprisoned people percentage-wise in the world. Let's turn these people into productive members of society, and then the tide will rise and all boats will rise. But nobody wants to look, especially with politicians who are, all they care about is their term, getting reelected. That's the big flaw in our system, is that what's the number one job of a politician is to get reelected.
Right. His number one job is to fundraise, right?
To get reelected.
Yeah, right. Bring money in so I can be elected. That's right.
Right. So the politicians inherently in our system are all short-term minded and want to keep their constituents happy in the short term, so they can get reelected in the next 2 to 4 to 6 years.
Right.
Or whereas these systems, this investment that we need in all kinds of things, but especially in what Matt's talking about, it's not going to produce a yield for a generation, and no one wants to think that way.
Right. And the reality is the earlier we intervene and the earlier we provide more resiliency tools and life skill tools to kids, that will have impact on the problem of evil. There will be less evil in the world the more resources we give to kids, and again, the earlier we can intervene. We don't have to guess. We really do know. We really do. Is that in each of these situations, in any situation, the more access to options, the more access to, again, I'll say resources, whether that be educational, whether that be industrial, food, the poverty issues, all these things, the less, the fewer kids we have dealing with that, then it will reduce, it will have impact on the problem of evil. But you have a hyper competitive system that is built on, or is benefits so many if others are so unequal. You're really not motivating that. It does come to, there is a money question, even though it would be an investment. We could save money here, right? I know how much how much it costs to engage in investigation and prosecution, and how you can use tools. You can adjust that and use the system in order to save resources to do the things you're talking about. It's just that the people who call the shots are personally financially benefiting from
the war on drugs
and the war on drugs. and in all these things, and that's the problem. I mean, again, I'll say that's the problem of evil. The problem of evil is that we have commoditized and made currency of the suffering, ultimately the suffering of kids. Suffering of kids.
Well, it's a good monologue, man. I mean, a good speech, and I don't have too much of a quarrel because this is your goddamn wheelhouse. So yeah, all right.
I did bring you in. Yes, let's talk about the best thing. Yeah,
I mean, but you're not really talking about the philosophical problem of evil, though. You're talking about a subsection of
well,
of
I don't
evil,
know. I think I am talking about. I am talking
you're,
about the philosophical problem of evil.
yeah, you're talking about a small chunk of it. I mean, there's natural evil, accidents that no one's at fault. There's no evil intention there. And let's say the stoplight breaks and both ways say green, and a T-bone happens. You got tsunamis, you got earthquakes, you got childhood cancer.
I guess I don't see evil in that. I don't understand.
Well,
I don't understand.
That's the problem of evil is the bad things happening is evil, is the problem of evil question. You're talking about evil acts of men.
Well, because to me that is evil. There's no evil in natural things happening. That just happens, right? Accidents happen, bad things happen, death happens. I mean, it's hard for me to look at a volcano or a hurricane or these things and say, oh, well, that's a manifestation of evil.
Well, it's the same result if whether or not a psychopath slashes your kid's throat or they are inflicted with a rare form of blood cancer at the same age and are dead within a week. It's still the same result. The kid has died at an unnaturally young age. And that is the problem. I mean, you're acting like I'm making this up. This is the problem of evil that philosophers fucking talk about.
Well, sure, but I would distinguish those two. And here's why. I want to talk about the result being the same.
But the problem of evil, Matt, isn't. I think the disconnect here is that the problem of evil that philosophers have talked about for millennia is in the context of a God that controls everything.
There we go.
And so if a tornado comes down and destroys your entire family while you're at work, you're going to find that an evil act. And if you believe that God controls everything, then that is evil.
That's an important condition. And ultimately, I wrote something down as I was kind of thinking about this. It says, well, the problem of evil only relates directly to your concept of God.
Yeah.
And so it really becomes, it tells you more about what you think about God and what you think God is than it does anything about evil or of humanity or any of those things. So I think that's ultimately, that gets to the core of it, is when you're talking about the problem of evil, all you're doing is revealing.
Well, there's no problem of evil if you don't have a God that controls everything. It becomes shit happens sometimes, and then men do shit.
See, but I do think that to me the problem of evil is that evil exists by man, by individuals in some, and then it becomes, well, why here and why not there? So that becomes a problem of evil, of men doing harm to other. To me, this is Matt, right? And this is a reflection more of my concept of God or lack thereof, whatever. And so I do say, well, there is a problem of evil, and there's a problem with people doing harm to other people. And I'll just kind of leave it that broad.
Yes, it's the problem of human evil.
Sure, because to me that is evil. Everything else is just a naturally occurring thing. But so yeah, I agree with you. But so every philosopher, everybody that's talked about evil has taken it from this perspective of this.
Well, in the Western world,
Elohimic.
Well, I mean, Christians have controlled the Western world for 2,000 years, so it's everything has come in Western philosophy. I'm not talking about like Buddhism and Taoism and stuff like that. I'm talking about
even go beyond. I mean, go before. I mean, even whatever.
Yeah, philosophy in the Western world after the Greeks.
There you go.
But even the Greeks had the problem. The gods were in control, like Zeus was in control. So they had a problem of evil to deal with too. And that's where you get Euthyphro's 2 horns and trying to split the horns. But as far as like the last 2,000 years, philosophy, I mean, everyone was Christian for the longest time. And so your philosophers are like Aquinas and Augustine or Augustine, however you pronounce it. And then you get on to like, what's his name? I think, therefore I am. Descartes.
Oh, yeah, Descartes.
Yeah, Descartes, who was very Christian. And so it all, like, all these people tried to solve the problem of evil within the Christian context.
Sure.
With an all-powerful, all-knowing, all good God. And that's traditionally when people say the problem of evil, they're talking about in the context of that kind of God.
Yeah, but why get into it? So that's okay. Why would I have a conversation based on a set of givens and a set of reality I simply reject?
Because you're talking to a Christian.
Yeah. Yeah, I like how Matt was saying, I solved the problem of evil if you just remove the God element.
Yeah, I resolved
it. Now you're not talking about the problem of evil been philosophy designed. Yeah, you're right.
So
you're restructuring the entire argument.
Well, no, what I'm trying to
really make it an easy argument to solve.
I don't
Take
know
out that one little element.
I don't know that it does, because to me is this is the Mr. Deity, right? Is let's eliminate all floods and all that. Let's eliminate all natural things. Let's take that off the table. You're still with a lot of fucking evil in the world. I don't know that solved.
Well, even that could be subjective, but yeah, whatever. Well, who defines what is evil?
Yes, and I'm defining it as when another person causes harm to another person, irrespective or doesn't
even
matter.
unintentionally.
Even unintentionally. In most bad things, most harmful things, most destructive and a lot of suffering.
Well, that's what I mean by subjective.
Born of good faith. And I'm telling you from philosophy of Matt.
Right. Yeah.
So you have great, I want I love my kid, and therefore I, put all these restrictions on them, and then they grow up and have all these problems. Well, my intentions were good, so you can't blame me. No, I will.
See, I don't see it, because like if someone's backing out of their driveway and they run over their child, I don't see that necessarily. I don't see that as evil. It's a terrible, terrible tragedy. Certainly not evil. No, there was no intention. Just a catastrophic, tragic event that can happen.
So Matt, there is no problem of evil in my mind. I'm not sure you understand that. I don't have a problem of evil.
Because you removed the God element.
I don't have a God that's all-knowing, all-powerful. The long debate is because everyone is trying to convince Christians that their own philosophy.
I have no interest in convincing Christians.
Neither do I anymore. Don't go and say I've solved the problem of evil and I can find answers in the Bible.
I reject
the problem of evil.
Oh well, we'll get to the we can get to the Bible here, but no, I reject that the Christians get to frame this conversation as if we have to talk about it in terms of how Christians view.
Well, we wouldn't talk to them about it if they didn't have so much goddamn power. Like Louis C.K. said in his last special before he got sent into the wilderness, he said, "Stop debating about which religion won. Just tell me, what year is it?"
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Well, I got to run.
We were talking this in frame it of a very narrow Christian.
Oh, come on. You said the problem of evil. You know where that comes from. You know the baggage that it surrounds. You can't just, it's like saying, hey, I know, I figured out the Bible. I know exactly.
I know God.
Exactly. Yeah. I got God nailed down. I know exactly what the Bible's trying to say. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Well, so I do. I actually do. I know what the Bible's trying to say.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah. Because let me explain.
Yeah.
Real
Save
quick.
that.
No. I want to. It's very easy. The Bible is very easy. Just like the problem of evil reveals more about what a person views. Here's what I'll actually say. The problem of evil doesn't just reveal what a person thinks about God. The problem of evil reveals what they think about themselves.
Okay.
So, and similarly,
Remove the
Bible,
God element, right? Yeah.
yes, sure. If you want to remove the God element, it does that, and that's why and I've said this before to a number of people. Is like, dude, until we talk about anything, I really do need to know what your concept of God is.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's vital. Yeah,
it is, right? And so I
Yeah.
want to know your view of the problem of evil, mainly because it doesn't just reveal to me about your what you think about God. It really reveals what you think about you. Because if you do believe in this punitive, cursing God,
intervening God.
Yeah, that tells me what you're willing to do. You're an intervening being. You also will be comfortable intervening in the lives of other smaller beings, right?
In the name of a God that you believe.
Sure.
Talk about the ultimate justifier.
Yeah, you'll just be an extension of that, right? Do unto others the way that you would have done unto you. Well, if you accept that your God treats you in this way, you have no problem treating other people that way. And that's why that is the problem. That's again, that relates to the issue, to evil. But scriptures simply tell scriptures are simply I should say the scriptures, right? The Bible. They're probably a better form of like the Ouija board. What are those tarot cards or horoscope than anything else? Is person reads it and they interpret what they, how it applies to them and their view of it. And I we have such a tough time, and this is why you can't, this becomes the conflict between a lot of Mormons and ex-Mormons. But you guys believe this, and they say, well, I don't believe that. Yes, you do, because this is what you believe. And but I don't believe that. And we really force the way we interpret every scripture or teaching or whatever, and it ends up just being a reflection of that person. Just like my concept of evil is directly just tied to my concept or lack thereof of God. And my concept of God is the self, is the idea of the self versus the ego.
Well, the proof, a good example of what you're saying is that everyone's God shockingly agrees with them in every aspect.
Right.
Their God is lined up 100% on every political position that they hold.
And
it's just a reflection of yourself.
It is, and that's what the scriptures have become. It's a form. What it would. Anybody that has any form of awareness simply is unaware of. It really. That's just another way of saying I'm ignorant of a whole lot of things, because your attention's over here, so you miss these things over here. Again, Richard Feynman was.
He's the bongos guy.
Oh, I don't know. I'll have to see his bongos, but he was saying you have to define basically every term. You need to have somebody, especially certain terms, but I always want to hear what somebody else's definition is of a word. And he really focused on the word energy, which I thought was really fascinating, because he said, he was talking about this first grade book, like a first grade science book, and it was saying they gave these examples of, and he gave all these examples, and said the answer was they all require energy to move. And he just explained how they didn't teach what energy is at all, and it's such an already nebulous term that, and until you can really use it with your own with your own words, there's no point in even talking about it. And he was equating using the term energy. He's like, you might as well just be talking about God or magic if you use the term energy without really being able to define it. He says, and too often, too many people are just taking the word energy and replacing it for any other nebulous term and thinking that it's somehow.
Are you kidding me? Energy is one of the most bastardized terms out there.
Right.
Fucking energy. Oh, chakras and auras and negative energy, positive energy.
Good vibes.
Yeah.
No, give me, you got good. Yeah. All those things. And I thought it was interesting. He was talking about that, because that's exactly what I think about, God. And, it's gotten to a point where, the idea of consciousness has become the same thing. Yeah. Well, all right, Randy. So another time But this is
We
also
can get into your Bible stories.
yeah, because this is why the Bible is just a reflection of you, right? Of me, of your thoughts. Is I see brilliant allegories of natural evolution in the Old Testament completely. And
Well, I'll reserve my comments for that.
Yeah, well,
that
we'll get
discussion.
into it. Well, so to me, so let me bring full circle. I do think I've solved the problem of evil.
According to Matt.
According to me, who the fuck else? Hey, bro, did I tell you who God is? It's the self. Who the fuck else am I appealing to?
That footnote is important because people will listen to that and say, he's speaking for me again. He's speaking for me.
No, I don't care what anyone else believes, but I have very comfortably gotten to a place of what I believe, and it affects the way that I live in the real world.
Okay, quick recap. What is you said you solved it? What is the solution?
The solution is something
to the
Jesus
problem
said.
of evil. What's
This
that?
is something Jesus said. Love your enemy as yourself.
Empathy.
Huh?
Empathy.
Well, yes, empathy, absolutely. But see, empathy is another one of those words like energy. It's meaningless. I mean, so empathy is another word to get into. And
stay on target here.
Yeah,
man. Come on, man.
but
focus.
No, I've really been thinking about that phrase, and and I really do it. It reveals our problem, which is ultimately this: loving your enemy as yourself is simply being willing to have the same standard of proof, the same type of evidence, and the same application that you would to yourself. And that's where we have gone so. I mean, it's certainly been this way to a degree, right? But the level to which we no longer hold not just ourselves, but anyone who we might think is like us, whether it be in our tribe or just the way we think or whatever, versus a person who doesn't ideologically. Our enemies have now become more and varied to the point that we not only are willing to, we want to treat them differently, which brings us full circle to wanting to treat them as less human. Really want to treat, we will not have, we are incapable, it seems, of having the same standards for a person who just simply thinks or believes or approaches the world differently than we do.
I think maybe more practical, but at least as useful as the golden rule is don't do unto others as you would not have done it to yourself. And I'll give you an example. I once on a pretty active forum back early in my days of leaving the church, made a comment that I regretted that wasn't like super sexist, but it was a little bit sexist.
It wasn't like the most sexist thing I've ever said.
I've vetted this with some people that whose opinions I trust and respect, and it wasn't as bad. But I got treated like I was like the scum of the earth. I got just piled on to the point where I was really depressed for a couple of days.
From the reaction, just from how you got kind of beat up.
From when I got beat up and mobbed on,
yeah.
and everything, and so we all make mistakes. I think we need to step back and think, okay, what if I made this mistake? How would I want to be treated at this point?
Yeah.
So don't do unto others what you would rather not be done to yourself.
Amen, brother Brandy. And I think it's kind of the same thing. And let's do it. Let's actually do it. And start again. I always say this: start with your kids. Do you remember what it was like to be a kid? Remember? I love. Is it the Brian Regan where the parent the kid loses the the balloon and is like, oh, I'm crying, and the parent's like, stop it, quick, and he's like, you remember what it was like to lose the balloon? It was the worst thing in the world. Remember what it was like to be a kid? Do unto others, do not unto what not do unto.
Yeah. Do you remember how scared you used to be? Like if you're going to get in trouble. I mean, I remember chasing my sister with a baseball bat when I was 4 and trying to kill my sister, knocking 2 holes in a door. And as soon as I came to, I honestly thought my parents might institute the death penalty for
yeah.
you're a kid. You're not thinking rationally. You think that it's the end of the world. Yep. So think about how scared they are in that situation. when you're being a parent and act accordingly.
Because we're really big compared to them. We're really big.
I actually do have to reiterate to my youngest a lot that I said, no matter what happens, I still will love you. That'll never stop. Yeah. So don't, I have to remind her all the time, because you're right. She's so irrational. She's like, yeah, but if I do this one thing, that'll stop loving me then. If I fail my class, if I do this, I was like, what? That's in it. No, it's 100% not true. So I have to continue to remind her, because I'm fighting these irrational thoughts that come into their heads. So, yeah.
Look at Tom's answer to evil. Love.
No, remove the God element. Then you don't have the problem of evil. That's what
that's ultimately what we
Randy
all
Randy and I just discussed. If you want to solve the problem of evil, just remove God from it.
But that's not solving it. That's just
that's just what taking.
I mean, that's making it not a real problem anymore.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
A better word for it would be the conundrum of evil. In the Christian context.
Yeah, okay, that I agree with 100%. If we want to have a conversation, the conundrum of evil in
the Christian context,
20th
it rolls
century
right off the
Christian.
You've been listening to If and Stamp.
Say, please subscribe to us
Please subscribe to us
on iTunes
and
and give us feedback. We like 5 stars. And go to Infants on Thrones. Infants on Thrones.
Yes!
.com. That's our website.
Please invite us.